All right, hey everybody, we're back. So we're back. We'll be back after these commercial messages, this commercial break. A word from our sponsors, as if we had sponsors. Okay, so working on the motor and cowling. Here you can see I've got the headrest. Now I just painted it. I haven't installed it in there yet. But that's what it'll look like with the zinc chromate or interior green color they call it. This is the motor I've got mocked up so far. I painted it's not a firewall. I'll keep calling it the firewall, even though that's not really where the firewall would be. I think I mentioned that ad nauseum here. The firewall, if this were an actual scale kit, a model kit, would be here. This is where the firewall would be, but the way Guillow did it was they cut what was essentially the cowling, which is this, they cut in half. Alright, so we're going to call this the firewall. Anyway, it's painted dark gray, not black. I wanted it to be a contrast to the black and not match the crankcase bell. I got to tidy up a little bit on some of these small components. Have a few cracks showing, wood grain showing. So we'll tidy that up, do a little more sanding and repaint that, most likely with brush to fill that in. So now what I'm working on is, and you can see that motor. I'll do a comparison. I don't know if I can get this to balance. There we go. So there's that, and this is what we would have had. This. So you can see. Let me just do it this way. You can see it's worth a little bit of time and effort. Just cut this out and mock something up. You know, I think. Anyway, for me that was the answer. Your results can vary. Now these can be dressed up. I did it on the. You have to forgive the condition of the cowling for the Air Express. I'm going to sand it down and redo it with paint. Part of this was decal and part of it was paint, and I just didn't like it the way it looked. So I'm going to be sanding this down and redoing it. But you can see if you do a little bit of work. Here, you can fix this a little bit. I wrapped a piece of styrene tubing to replicate around the crankcase to replicate the ignition harness casing, and then I added the plug wires and I added the small bits and pieces to replicate the push rods. So, with a little bit of effort, you can make those blown vacuum form motors look at least passable, but I couldn't work with. And my real complaint with this was the air scoop divider. So I'm going to make one here out of this birch ply. So I wet it and wrapped it to something that was about the right shape. This is going to drop in behind here. You can see the wood part there. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to glue it into this. I'm actually going to pre-form it and then glue it right under the motor. And then there's two small stubby vertical parts that come off about like so at 1/3 intervals. So we'll put those in at roughly 1/3 interval, one here and one left, one right. And then, but before I do that, this is just the core of what I'm going to have. So I'm pre-forming it. It'll glue on into position, and then I'll laminate probably the underside of it to thicken it. And we'll just use probably 16th balsa and just come along after that's fitted on there. And we'll wrap the underside. Of course, it'll have to be wetted to make that radius. So we use the sheet balsa to laminate this, and then that'll give us a nice edge to bullnose to round out, and that'll fit right behind the cowling. So that edge, I want it to just match the edge of the cowling radius, this tight radius at the edge of the cowling. So whatever this thickness is, it'll match this thickness here, this apparent thickness here. Okay, does that make sense? So that's where we're headed with this. All right, and then once that part is, again, once this is formed, it'll be just glued in there. Once it's all fitted with the two vertical supports below at 1/3 intervals, that whole unit will be painted in interior green. and we'll be able to, at that point, we'll be able to button this up. The motor's not glued in yet. I just fitted it in there so that I could, get a rough estimation of how things look. We have a proper recess. We have the end of the crankcase bell just comes out past the nose by about I don't know, 3/32. And then if needed for the prop, I can just put a small washer or bushing there, and that'll push the prop blades out so they're not scraping. They're going to be close to the prop blades will be close to the face of our cowling, but they must not touch it. So that's when sometimes you might need a bushing or so to stand the prop off from the face of the cowling. But we've got a nice protrusion just about 3/32 when this is fitted on here properly of protrusion for that fitting there. Okay, so that's where we are. Not a whole lot of headway. Building up that motor took some time. It's a pretty straightforward. I talked about it with the wood dowels around the balsa core crankcase, and then the shaped balsa nose, or what I call the crankcase bell housing. We just used a little bit of fine solder for the electrical wiring, and just little bits of balsa here and there for the magnetos and prop control element. Okay, so that's our net result with the motor. I think that's about where I'll leave it. If anything, it'll get a dusting of semi-gloss clear, just a light spray of that, and then it'll get another hit when I finish the model and have all the decals and panel lines installed, and then I give it an overall wash before we put the canopy on. You can see, we're getting somewhere. We're close. I'm not going to be able to fit this on here while I'm holding the camera. To give you an idea, though, there's about what we have, or will have shortly. And then once the motor and everything is, and the cowling is faired in, and this is all smoothed out, and the body's been given another overall sanding, at that point I'll start working on the cockpit interior. So we'll get the pilot painted, we'll get the cockpit interior done, we'll put the seat in, control yoke and all that stuff, panel, we'll get the instrument panel in there. And then at that point I'm going to start working on the wing. And then I think in and around the wing work that I'm going to be doing, I'm also going to fit in the canopy rails, and we'll get this sliding canopy sorted out. So if you remember the features that I'm going for here, the kit involves all kinds of stuff. The ones I'm going to attempt to recreate are the sliding canopy, posable flaps, movable flaps, and retractable landing gear, and obviously a spinning prop. And that's what I'm going to attempt to do. The empennage, the tail, and vertical tail and horizontal stabilizer, all that stuff will be fixed. They won't be movable. Just I want the flaps to be able to be posed either in a landing or in-flight position, and then the landing gear to be either up or down. And then the reason I wanted it, it's a challenge, right? And then I also, in case if I want to hang the airplane, I can hang it in as if in flight or in landing configuration. And then if I want it on a shelf with the gear down, I can put the flaps down. It's an airplane thing. It's a guy who builds airplane models thing. But that's what I want to do. I want the challenge of it, I guess. Something to, cause me to have to think a little, but not jump off the bridge. If that makes sense. Well, I guess we'll see which way it works out. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great day.